Bonjour mes amis, welcome, bienvenue à Language Boost, and today I will share with you my 7 best tips that will help you to start your French learning journey with a boost. Hello everyone, my name is Jan van der A. Welcome to Language Boost, the channel where you can find language learning tips, tricks, and also, of course, the motivation to learn a new language, because that's my first tip for those who want to learn French. Make sure that you're motivated, because learning any language is going to take a lot of time, energy, and also some frustration. And if you're not motivated, if you don't have enough reasons to learn the language, then eventually you're going to give up, unfortunately. So if you don't have the reasons, or if you don't have this connection with the language, you know what I'm talking about, like disconnection. Sometimes you hear a language, or you've been to a country and you like the culture, you can feel like this connection, and actually that, of course, can also help you to learn the language. It's not always the reasons, but make sure that you have the motivation. If not, then you might not succeed, and maybe in that case it's just better to do something else with your time. On the other hand, if you are motivated, go for it, because learning French can change your life. It definitely has changed my life, and so can it for you. I'm sure about that. That was tip number 1. Tip number 2, don't try to learn everything. You will always notice that once you start learning a new language, you use textbooks. There is lots of long, difficult words that they want you to learn, but maybe you're not going to need these words in your first conversations. You know, we always say that it's very important to have momentum in language learning, which basically means that once you learn new things, you can start using them, and by using them, you get like this feeling of achievement. You get more motivated, you can learn more, which is going to result in more achievements and more motivation. This is very important. So don't try to avoid don't become overwhelmed by the language, but just focus on the vocabulary. Only focus on the vocabulary you think is going to be useful for you as a beginner who's learning French. So the words that you can use in your first conversation with native speakers. If you go to the country, if you meet French speakers, they often say, "Ah, mais tu parles français, pourquoi? Ah, why do you speak French?" You know, you can get these kind of questions. Where you're from, for how long have you been learning French? Focus on these things in the beginning. Later on, you can add more advanced vocabulary. Tip number 3, always learn in context. The human brain, tend to memorize things better once they're placed in context. And we can also apply this in language learning. Sometimes it's even easier to learn a whole phrase than just the words. And if you learn the whole phrase or the whole sentence, you also can at the same time learn some grammar, the grammar that's used in that sentence. So always learn in context. Context can be a sentence, it can be a story, it can be a situation you're in. Make sure that you use context. Okay? Now tip number 4 is really important, and that's use what you learn. It becomes easier to memorize things if you use it. If you use it in your own sentences, basically. So once you've learned a few words, always try to make a new sentence directly after you've learned a new word. And then maybe if you have an online lesson, you can do it in the beginning of the lesson, or when you learn the new word, and then by the end of your tutor session, you can always revise the new words and make new sentences with the words that you learned in that lesson. If you don't have a teacher, you can also do it by yourself. Just make sentences with the words that you know. Of course, repetition is also the key. So not just during that hour you have the lesson, but also the next day and the next week. Use the words that you learn, and it will be easier for you to activate this vocabulary, basically. Now, French is really a language that you should always study with audio. In general, I'm a supporter of learning with audio. The more associations with the words, with the vocabulary, with the language that we have, the better. So one way is looking at the word, but also listening to the words creates a stronger connection in your brain. Learning new things, learning in general, is all about making connections, and the more connections you have with a new word, for example, the better. Now, French is not a phonetic language, which means that you can, if you hear a French word or if you see a French word, it's difficult. Like, you cannot really be sure about the pronunciation of the word unless you know that word, unless you've heard it before. So always listen and read at the same time. That way, yeah, you can get your pronunciation just right, and that's very important in French. Now, tip number 6 is better to do 20 minutes per day than once or twice per week, 1 hour. Really, language learning is all about consistency. It's easier if you have the motivation, if it becomes part of your daily routine, basically. Me, for example, I do something with my languages every day. I don't take lessons every day, but at least I do something in my target language every day. Most of the time, not longer than 15 or 20 minutes. That's really enough, but you need to do it consistently over a longer, in the long term, basically. So, consistency, do something every day. Better to do 20 minutes every day than 1 hour, than 3 hours maybe once per week. Really, this works. Now, tip number 7, repetition is the key. Really, language learning is, most of it, I would say 70 or 80% is about repetition. You don't need to spend so much time on learning new things. Actually, activating your passive vocabulary is often more important. Once you learn something, you need to use it. You need to revise it many, many times. And only after you've seen a new word 5 or 6, maybe even more times, then it becomes easier to memorize it. Like when I was learning Russian last year, I had to see Russian words often more than 8 times. The words are long, pronunciation is difficult, the intonation is always, I was never sure where the stress was. You really need a lot of input, a lot of repetition, and only then, after a while, then all of a sudden you're going to memorize the words. But this doesn't come automatically. You need a lot of repetition. I personally like to study with flashcards in the beginning. Later on, let's say if you can already speak the language, if you're at a B level, for example, then you still need a lot of repetition, but I do that by lots of reading, and if the words are really important, then they will appear in the text more often than the words that are not so important. So I don't worry so much. I don't use flashcards at these stages. But for sure, but one thing is sure, if you want to memorize vocabulary, if you want to learn a language, you need to do a lot of revision, and you need to repeat the same things over and over again, and eventually becomes like second nature. The language becomes part of you. And if you want to learn how you can become conversational in French in a matter of weeks, then go to our website, and we have a free mini video course where we give you more details and show you exactly how you can become conversational in only a matter of weeks. It's for free, so go to languageboost.biz, and there is a section there that says sign up for the free French 3-part video course, I think it's called. Yeah, so see you there, and good luck with your French.